Welcome to the Introduction to the History and Secondary School Major Talk. I've put together this information in order to help you as a history and secondary school major better to understand the requirements of the major. It is a complex major. I think it's a great major, but it's a complex major, and it's really easy to make a mistake. And we want to help you to make sure to avoid any issues that might make it more difficult to graduate or that might delay graduation. And I think a key way to do that is just to let you know how the major works in general and about some of the bureaucratic procedures connected to the major. So before I continue, I need to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Franklin Rausch. You can contact me at frausch@lander.edu. That is a important thing that you should know is how to contact us and that you should contact us. One key thing I'm going to emphasize over and over in this presentation is that because this major is so complex, especially if you have you bring in courses that you've already gotten credit for, something like that, it's really easy to have a problem. And whenever you have a question, it's important to ask it and to receive an answer. And of course, you need to know who to ask. And I'm a person you can ask. So a little bit about myself. I'm an associate professor of history here at Lander. My research interests, so when I write papers and do things like that, I research East Asia, particularly Korea. And I'm a specialist in religion. I look at the anti-Catholic persecutions of the 19th century, and I also look at Christianity and religion more broadly in Korea. Now that's when I'm doing my research. And one thing that I want to emphasize, first of all, with college professors, most of us are doctors. We hold PhDs, and part of that is we're required to do research, right? So we're not just teaching in the classroom. That's only part of our job. We also are not just teaching knowledge in a sense, we're creating knowledge. We're going out there and studying and finding new ways to understand the world. Now, you're probably not going to do that much with my research, but there's a good chance that you'll take me sometime as a professor, as a teacher. I teach upper-level East Asian history classes. I teach China, Japan, Korea, and I teach a class called Modern East Asia that has all three of them. I also teach a popular culture class for the Honors College. It's like an introduction to honors course. And I also teach some upper-level religion classes as well, like Religion's the World and Religion and Warfare. Now, there's a good chance, and this is partially why I'm making this video, I also teach world history. There is a very good chance that if you are a freshman at Lander University, you're going to take my History 121 class, World Civilizations to 1600. That is a required class for secondary school certification people. And that's why I tend to also be an advisor to the sophomore history secondary school majors, right? So you come into Lander University, you're usually assigned a freshman advisor. But you're also probably, if you're coming as a secondary school certification person, you're going to see me 3 days out of the week, every week for your freshman fall semester. And there's a good chance that you also take History 122 with me in the spring. And I say good chance because I'm the only one that teaches it. So you'll see me then that second semester. So there's a really good chance I will have gotten to know you in those classes, because if you're a secondary school certification major, they're probably going to put you in those classes with me. And that's one reason why I advise the sophomore history secondary school majors, because I usually already know them. And one reason I want to highlight that is so that, you can email me a question, or there's a good chance you're going to see me and you can just ask me before or after class. You can come to my office hours and so forth. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm making this video, right? I want to help freshmen be prepared and be ready, because they're going to become my advisees. And, it would be nice to prevent any problems rather than have to solve them later, right? It's always easier to prevent a problem than to solve one. Now, one thing about this major, there's some good news and there's some bad news. The good news of this major is we're pretty much at 100% placement rate for people who complete the major and who want to teach. So if you succeed in this major, you get it, you're going to get a job teaching if that's what you want. The bad news is that there are a good number of people who do not successfully complete the major. Now, sometimes from my perspective, that's okay, because what happens is they start in the major and then they realize they don't really want to be a classroom teacher. They want to do something else. And that's fine by me. I don't want to pressure people to be a teacher. Being a teacher is a very difficult job. It's not a particularly high-paying job for how difficult it is. So you should only be a teacher if you really want to be a teacher. And we want to help people who don't really want to be teachers to realize that and help them find a major that works for them. So that's fine with me. I am concerned, though, that sometimes we do have people that really want to be teachers, but for various reasons are not able to become teachers. And I want to try and prevent that, right? I want to help those of you who want to become teachers to become teachers. Because, like I said, the good news is if you can do it, not only will you have a job you will like, you will have a job, right? You will be employed. provided that you do everything you're supposed to and you follow the rules. So I just said you have to follow the rules. Now, where do you find the rules? How do you know the kinds of things you're supposed to do? And you're going to hear a lot of terms being used, and it may not always be clear what they are. But the first thing I want to talk about is what's called the catalog, right? Each year, Lander University issues a catalog, right? There's usually an undergraduate catalog and a graduate catalog. The slide here shows the 2019-2020 undergraduate catalog. They change every year. And what happens is, typically, when you matriculate, you may hear that word, but that's a fancy word, matriculate, that just means enter college. The year typically when you enter college, that is the catalog you'll be on for your whole career. And the catalog says what are the requirements are for your major. So if you start in the year 2019, we'll say as a political science major, you need to fulfill the requirements in the 2019-2020 undergraduate catalog to become a political science major. Now, you could petition to go on a different catalog year. So let's say that for some reason, the 2021-2022 catalog would actually work better for you. You can sometimes petition to be on that catalog, though you can't mix them, right? You can't pick requirements from one catalog and requirements from another. You're just on a catalog or you're not on a catalog. Now, here's the thing, and this is one thing I really have to stress for history secondary school majors. You are different. You are on the most recent catalog every year. So what will happen is eventually, right, it'll be 2020, 2021. Even if you entered on 2019, you automatically go to that new catalog. So what does that mean practically speaking is that while you're in the middle of your college career, the requirements to get your degree may change. And you may say, wait a second, that's not fair. How can you add another class? You know, it's my senior year. I'm getting ready to graduate, and now you tell me I have to take this other class? And I agree in a sense it is unfair, but we have to do that. And this is the reason. In order to get a teaching job, you need to be approved by the state. We call that certification. If you're not approved by the state because you don't fulfill a requirement that the state gives us, you don't get certified. So if the government says to us, you need to include this course, and we say, no, we don't want to, they'll say, fine, we won't certify your students. So I just really want to stress that, first of all, that your catalog year can change every year. The requirements could change. And that's not just Lander. My understanding is that's just across the board because the government will not certify people who don't meet the requirements, and the government can change the requirements. So I just want to emphasize that. So this is the catalog, right? When people talk about catalog, about this document, it's available as a PDF on the Lander website. If you just look up catalog on the Lander website, you can find your catalog and it will tell the requirements that you have to follow in order to complete a degree. Now, I'm looking here at a slide for the program requirement sheet, right? This is sometimes called the Program of Study or abbreviated POS. So in the catalog, you can find something called a Program of Study. And the Program of Study says the requirements you have to have. Now, this is the Program of Study for 2019, 2020. It could change. So do not look at this and say, oh, this is what I have to do. It may not be what you have to do. It depends on the catalog year you're under. But I just want to give you a sense of what this looks like, right? You'll find in the catalog, it'll say something like degree, Bachelor of Science, major history, certification, secondary social studies, teacher, right? And I want to stress, notice it says social studies. This degree doesn't just get you ready to teach history, it gets you ready to teach psychology or sociology or economics or government in a high school, right? In a secondary school. So that's really cool, I think. It gives you, that makes things broader, and that's why we require classes. As you can see under B, it says Behavior and Social Studies Perspectives. You're required to take History 121 and Political Science 101. That's why we require Political Science 101, because you may have to teach it. Now, that could change between when this video was made and when you're listening to it. The key thing I'm trying to emphasize is not that you have to follow these particular requirements, but that it's in the catalog that you find your requirements. Now, you'll notice also that there's an arrow there, and it's pointing to how it lists the credit hours, and 2 of those credit hours, you'll notice that the arrows point to have asterisks next to them, right? So I need to explain what that means. So if you were going to go down to the next page, go down a little bit further, you can see here at the bottom where there's 1 asterisk, it says a grade of C or better is required. If there's 2 asterisks, a grade of B or better is required. So you can see that for Education 203 here, it has 2 asterisks. It needs a B or better in order for it to count towards your degree. So you want to be aware of that. It's not enough just to take and pass a class. Some classes need a certain grade. right? So Education 203 is like a classroom experience class. That's where you're actually observing a class. We think that class is so important, you got to have at least a B. We also think these other classes are important. We think political science is important, but we're willing to accept a C for that, right? It only had one asterisk, but you want to keep that in mind. And if you're not able to achieve that grade, you have to take the class again if you want to have it count towards the major. And if it doesn't count towards the major, you won't graduate with that major. So I really want to stress that. You want to be careful to make sure that not only are you taking the classes you need to take, you're aware of what grade you need to get in those classes, and you are sure to make sure that you get that grade. Now, that catalog tells you what courses you have to take, but it doesn't tell you necessarily when you have to take them. So another thing you can look at, and I usually give these copies of these to my advisees, but if you want to go look at it yourself, if you go to the lander.edu website and look up major guides, it should take you to a page that has a list of the majors. And if you open up the history tab, it lists 3 different major guides. And if you click on the secondary teacher certification one, the one that has the arrow pointing to it, it will show you what's called a 4-year guide. And the purpose of the 4-year guide is to show you what classes you would need to take when in order to complete your degree in 4 years. So this next slide gives you an example of a major guide, right? This is the 2019-2020 major guide. It could change by the time you look at this. So don't look at this major guide here to know what you need to take. I'm just using it to show you how to read a major guide. And you can see that, for example, in the first semester, it says English 101, History 121, and so forth for the first year. You can also see that there's things highlighted in yellow. So those are courses that you don't necessarily have to take in sequence. The other courses are ones we think you should take in sequence or have to be taken in sequence. But those ones that are highlighted, you could change them around a little bit. So you want to take poli-sci your first semester and you want to take sociology your second semester, that's not a problem. So there is some flexibility here, but having a look at the major guide can give you a sense of what you need to do when in order to successfully complete the degree in 4 years. And I want to note, and this isn't always the case, but you will see that here we do expect that at some point you would likely need to take a summer class. Now, it's not always the case. A lot of it just depends on you individually, on what courses you're bringing in, and on things you're trying to do. But it is important to note that you may need to take a summer class at some point. And one thing I want to emphasize, I always tell students, advising is an art, not a science, because things are so complex. And sometimes, we have to just go based on probability, what seems to make sense at the time. So it's very important that you talk to your advisor, that you be open with your advisor, and that you give us lots of information. And you be prepared and you understand what is required of you. And looking at the 4-year major guide can help you a lot with that. So as I mentioned previously, advising is an art, not a science. Each student's case is special and different. And so it's important that we communicate with each other to make sure that you don't accidentally say, for example, take a class that you already have credit for. So when you meet with your advisor, you need to be very careful about knowing what sorts of AP credit you might have brought in, what kind of dual enrollment you might have brought in, what kind of transfer credit you've brought in. Because if you're not, if there's a breakdown in communication, if your advisor doesn't know that you've brought in credit, you may register for a class that you've already gotten credit for. And you don't want to have to take a class that you've already gotten credit for, right? You want to take a different class, because if you take a different class, that means you could pick up a minor. That means you could even theoretically graduate early, or you may not have to take a summer class. So it's very important that you know if you're bringing in AP credit or dual enrollment credit or transfer credit, and that you inform your advisor of that. Right? It's very important. If your advisor does not know that, they may accidentally put you in a course that you should not be in because you've already done it. Another thing to tell your advisor is if you're thinking of trying to pick up a minor or if you're trying to double major. I normally don't recommend that people try and double major with a history secondary school certification. I think it's very difficult to do so. It would mean having to stay longer. Minor is a bit easier to do. So like, let's say you really like teaching history, but you also like Spanish. You want to pick up a minor in Spanish. That's something that we can help you with. And if you want to do something like pick up the pre-law minor or a minor in political science, that's something especially we need to know of, because sometimes we can find courses that count for both, right? So we can find a course that counts, that fulfills a major requirement for secondary school certification and that fills a requirement for your minor, but you have to let your advisor know that. You want to remind them, right? So I have to stress, everyone has a different situation. Advisors were advising many different people. And so it's important that you take the initiative to remind your advisor that you have this kind of credit, right? Or that you're interested in a minor or anything at all that you think might affect what courses you will take, right? Always talk to your advisor, remind us, let us know your situation so we can do our best to help you.